Hi, this lesson we will look at statistic 2, hypothesis testing, and we focus on type 1 and type 2 errors. In my previous lessons, we were discussing hypothesis testing, all right? When we carry out hypothesis testing, we have to make a decision. Okay, when we are making a decision, there will be chances that we have made an incorrect decision, and hence there will be type 1 or type 2 errors. Okay, refer to point 1. Type 1 error is defined as the H null is rejected when H null is true. And type 2 error is H null is not rejected when H null is false. Now, have a look at the table in point 2. When H null is rejected, and we realize that the H null is true, isn't it we have made an incorrect decision? Incorrect decisions. And then this is what we call the type 1 error. All right. Okay. How about H null is rejected and we realize that H null is false. So we reject a false H null. Isn't it we have made a correct decision? So there is no error involved here. All right. Okay, let's see. We have a look at H null is not rejected. So when H null is not rejected, and we realize that H null is true. See, H null is a true value and we do not reject it. And that means we have made a correct decision. So that means there is no error involved. When H null is not rejected and we realize that H null is a false value. So we do not reject the H null. And after a while, we realize that the H null value is incorrect. That means we have made an incorrect decision. And this error is what we call type 2 error. All right. Okay, now we have a look of some partial questions as example. So let's see these questions from May, June 2015, variant 7.2, and it is a question 4. In the past, the flight time in hours for a particular flight has had mean 6.2 and standard deviation 0.8. Some new regulations are introduced. In order to test whether these new regulations have had any effect upon flight times, the mean flight time for a random sample of 40 of these flights is found. Okay, part 1, state what is meant by a type 1 error in this context. Now, let's say if we are going to carry out testing, we have to list down the hypothesis, right? So we are listing out the hypothesis first. So according to the questions, supposedly the mean, the mu, should be equals to 6.20. All right. But due to the new regulations, we want to see whether there is an effect upon the flight times. So the H1 is going to be whether the mean is different or has changed. So it's supposed to be a 2-tier test, right? Not equals to 6.2. Okay, then we come back to the type 1 error. Okay, again, what does it mean by type 1 error? So let me write down the definitions at the side. Type 1 error means that we are going to H now is rejected. When H now is true, right? The H now is a correct value, but you rejected it, isn't it? You have made an incorrect decision. So this error is what we call type 1 error. So if we are trying to explain or state in these questions in the context of the questions, so which means we conclude the H now is rejected, right? Conclude that the flight times affected. All right, so we conclude that flight times affected. Why? Because we rejected H now. Rejected H now means automatically we accepted H1. And H1 is suggesting that the mean time is no longer 6.2. It's not the same as 6.2. That means we conclude the flight time is affected by the new regulations. Okay, but we have made an incorrect decision. Remember, that's why this is called an error. So towards the end, the H now is true. So when, in fact, there have not been all right. So this sentence is saying that the H now is true. We say that the flight time is affected, but actually the flight time are not affected. Okay, so that is what it meant by the type 1 error in this context. Now we have a look of the next questions. Okay, so this question is from May, June 2008. It's just a paper 7 last time. Question 4. People who diet can expect to lose an average of 3 kg in a month. In the book, the authors claim that people who follow a new diet will lose an average of more than 3 kg in a month. The weight losses of the 180 people in a random sample who had followed the new diet for a month were noted. The mean was 3.3 kg and the standard deviation was 2.8 kg. Now, part 2 state what is meant by a type 2 error in words relating to the context of the test in part 1. That means if we were to carry out a hypothesis test for these questions, what is the meaning of the type 2 error? Okay, let's say we list down the H now and H1. Okay, in this case, on average, if you have the diet, then you expect to lose weight 3 kg in a month. So the mean equals to 3. But in the book, the authors claim that they will lose an average of more than 3 kg. Right, more than 3 kg. That means H1 is suggesting that the mean is greater than 3. All right. So what does it mean by type 2 error? So the meaning of type 2 error is H now is not rejected when H now is false. Right? You do not reject the H now, but you realize that the H now is false at the end, then you know you are making an incorrect decision. So this error is called a type 2 error. So which means we conclude. So what do we conclude? H now is not rejected. So H now is not rejected means we conclude that the mean kg, that means the average loss is still 3 kg. So which means we conclude there's no extra weight loss. All right, so that is the conclusion. H now is not rejected. And then the H now is false. H now is false means the H now is not true, which means we have to reject the H now. So in H1 is suggesting what? The mean is greater than 3. So when there is, all right, so we conclude no extra weight loss because it means that we do not reject H now, but the H now is false. So which means when there is, that weight loss is more than 3 kg, right? But we conclude that there is no extra weight loss. Okay, so that is the meaning of type 2 error in the context of these questions. Okay, now we have a look at the next questions. All right, this is the May, June 2015, variant 7.1, also question 4. In the past, the time taken by vehicles to drive along a particular stretch of road has had mean 12.4 minutes and standard deviation 2.1 minutes. Some new signs are installed and it is expected that the mean time will increase. In order to test whether this is the case, the mean time for a random sample of vehicles is found. You may assume that the standard deviation is unchanged. Okay, state what is meant by a type 2 error in this context. So again, let's list down the hypothesis. So the mean supposed to be 12.4 minutes, but after the new size are installed, the mean time expect to increase. So the H1 should suggest that the mean greater than 12.4. Okay, so again, type 2 error, which is H now is not rejected when H now is false. That is why it is an error. Okay, so what do? We conclude. What do we conclude? We conclude when H now is not rejected. So we do not reject the H now, means we conclude that the mean time remains at 12.4, right? So we say the mean time is unchanged or remains. All right. Okay, but H now is false. So H now is false means this value should not be used anymore. So means we have to reject it. It's supposed to be the mean greater than 12.4. So the mean time will increase. So although mean time has increased. Right? So that is the meaning that the H now is false. When the mean time has increased, but you conclude that the mean time is unchanged, so that is what an error, and this error is what we call a type 2 error. All right, so these lessons will focus on the meaning of type 1 and type 2 errors, and by looking at a few partial questions, to discuss how can we explain or state the type 1 and type 2 errors in the context of the questions. That's all for these lessons. Do subscribe to the channel and like these lessons. Thank you.
That's all for today's video. If you're interested in more genuine sharing by other geniuses, please subscribe to our channel and don't forget to turn on the notification bell, ding dong. Also, if you're struggling with 1 or 2 past year questions and the mark scheme just doesn't seem to help, Genie has got you covered. Feel free to let us know what question it is by filling in the Google form linked in the description below. GenieUs Hub will get genius teachers to fulfill your request for the solution. Genie will see you next time. Bye-bye.